Gerald, if you could join me on stage screen, and I think you wanted to kind of highlight some of the key things coming out of the UNISECO project, again, to just kind of feed into that discussion that we're leading into.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So first of all, thanks a lot to Susanna, Heather, and Laura for the really very useful and very interesting presentations. I think it's extremely useful to have this overview on the partnership, the current status quo, and all the preparations going on, and also the overviews on the already and the LIFT project, to really understand some roots also and synergies, and where from a UNISECO perspective then also we can target our exploitation and provide some input, and also with respect to the LIFT project. I think the number of synergies that we have there, and maybe also the number of same challenges and problems. I'm referring to the last point on the consumers. I think that's something that we can probably also underline from a UNISECO perspective. So that's really useful and interesting. Alexander, can you share the slides? Would that? Yeah, super. Thank you. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I initially had in mind to go through a few slides on the UNISECO project that we also showed yesterday, just to repeat a bit. For those who are now here today for the first time, but I think we are running a little late in time and compared to the original program, and I think it was really good to spend this extra time on the different presentations, because they were really so useful. But I think what I would suggest is that I cut a few slides and I focus really just a little reminder from yesterday on the kind of main outputs that are coming out of UNISECO, and then a kind of, you can go to slide 8, please, and then a kind of quick attempt maybe to pick up a few issues that are coming out of UNISECO, but that also, from my impression from the presentations, are maybe a kind of common issues across the project and also for the candidate partnership, and then just one few points on linking to the discussion that we have in the next session. So, well, thanks a lot, Susanna, for providing that slide and linking the UNISECO outputs to the different task forces that preparing the partnership. So I shamelessly copied that figure that you had in your presentation into a slide here. And I'm just going to build on what you showed there, just maybe to go through a few of those outputs and how they could potentially link there. If you click again, Alexander, please. So I think one of the key outputs that we have in UNISECO, and that really, as I said also yesterday, is a kind of umbrella through all the work in UNISECO, is the experiences and the evaluations that we are doing on the multi-actor platforms, on the engagement, the knowledge exchange, and the exchange of experiences of the different local actors, but also the actors at the higher level. And I think here we could further explore also to the extent our experiences and our results from the UNISECO project could basically also feed into issues in relation to collaboration in the partnership. So I think there is some maybe value in looking further into this. And if you click again, Alexandra. And then also in terms of the common understanding, what you highlighted in one of the task force there, I think one of the key outputs of UNISECO is the kind of improved understanding on the different sustainability issues from the in-depth analysis that we have done at the case studies. So across the different farming systems and production systems that we looked at, but also in terms of the sustainability issues that we then see at a territorial level. And I think here with the different performance assessments, but also with the understanding of the processes that lead to those sustainability issues for different agroecological practices, agroecological approaches, I think there is a link here, a synergy that we could possibly explore. If you click again, please. Then in terms of, and maybe you click one more time so we can have two, yeah. And then further key outputs are really the performance assessments that we have produced in the UNISECO project on the different farms, the conventional farms, the farms that are implementing agroecological practices, looking at the differences there and looking at the trade-offs and the synergies that can occur through the implementation of different combinations of agroecological practices, and maybe deriving from that also future research needs. The same for the territorial level impact analysis that we have done. The results on how what are the impacts if we implement certain agroecological innovations at the larger scale, and how do those impacts potentially look like also in the context of different scenarios for the future, and what can we build on that, so what are the lessons that we can take into further future research needs. And if you click again, please, Alexander. Then one other point I wanted to stress here is the strategies of agroecological transitions that we have co-constructed in the case studies with the different actors in the multi-actor platforms. So the knowledge about the different barriers and drivers, and the joint ideas and propositions on concrete mechanisms on how to address those barriers and drivers. What are the governance changes that are particularly valid and suitable in those different local contexts of those different case studies? So again, I think this embedding the local context there is maybe an important aspect. And if you click again, please. And then the outputs on the assessments on the potential of the innovative market mechanisms, the different policy instruments, the kind of lessons that we can derive from that, to the extent maybe how can this feed into the policy and regulatory drivers that we need to know and think about also for the partnership, and also in terms of funding from the private and public sector. So I think that's another element there. If you click again, please. And I think that's the last point I wanted to stress here. Then, of course, when we talked about this yesterday already and picked up this also in the discussions about the agroecological knowledge hub, that we are in the process of finalizing with the UNISECO output, and that is also linked to the WWF Global tool, and the discussions we had yesterday, how potentially can we use insights from that then also for the wider agroecological knowledge hub development, that is also foreseen both in context of the partnership and the two CSAs that are involved in the preparation, but also in the context of the agroecological knowledge hub of the FAO, and to see where there are synergies there that can be exploited. And I'm really happy also that Dario from the FAO will later also in our roundtable discussion say a few words on the work from the FAO in relation to the agroecological transitions and the TAPE tool. So I think that there are indeed a number of outputs from the UNISECO project where we can, I think, very nicely feed into the process and the partnership. And maybe one of the things to explore is a kind of mapping that we do of the key exploitable results, how those fit to the different parts of the partnership, and then based on that to have further discussions. I think that could be a good way forward. So next slide, please. And as I said, I then rather quickly try to come up with some points kind of, well, that come out of the UNISECO project as quite important, and maybe link those also to what seem to be common issues that also in the other presentations, for example, on the Already project and the LIVE project, seem to play an important role. And I think that the first point here I want to raise is really about the scope, that the kind of systems we are looking at, not only in the projects, but maybe then also in looking into the future when it comes to the partnership, and that it is not about farms that are already agroecological or systems that are already agroecological, but rather to look at the whole range of systems, from really conventional systems initiating transitions to farming and production systems that enhance agroecological transitions. Then I think the aspects of really an improved understanding of agroecology, how to cooperate and to collaborate, how to engage, to bring together the different actors, and also about the performances of different practices, and to categorize the systems, and really to bring this together, and a kind of mapping exercise that also Heather was referring to. Then I think another aspect here is the local context that's really important, that cuts across, to really have this in-depth understanding of the local context. What are the specific barriers and drivers of agroecological transitions? And also, and that links also to the point of the governance networks, who are actually also the specific local and actors then who actually have an influence on addressing those barriers and drivers in order to progress with the transition. So that relates to the governance networks, and I think that also is I guess something that is relevant also, as Heather already pointed at, for the network, for the partnership, how to involve local actors, what are the relationships, and really then based on that to develop tailored solutions. I referred already to the multi-actor engagement, to the co-learning and knowledge sharing across multiple levels. And I think we hear more and more also about the importance of the evaluation of the engagement and the processes. And that's also a part that we are currently finalizing in the UNISECO project. We talked a lot about the need to move from individual actions to different forms of cooperation, and to increase cooperation, and how to engage and how to increase the capacity of local actors to actually be proactive in creating networks and being involved in networks. And we also picked up the important point of really involving the value chain actors and the consumers to really, in the long run, in terms of a kind of long-term sustainability, to also look at the transformation of the food system and beyond the narrower farm and farming system. And that also links to aspects such as education and knowledge exchange that also relates to consumers. And I think we had a couple of points at yesterday's discussions on how to link this potentially to educational programs, to school programs, and as mechanisms on how to achieve that. Then the point on the support instruments and the different incentives funded both through private and public sectors. What are the different roles and what's their potential in promoting transitions, and also to ensure sustainable funding, and really the kind of bundling of bringing together the existing and new knowledge in developing the knowledge hub. The next slide, please, Alexandra. And that's already my last slide then also. And I building on those points, I just went briefly through. I just picked from the yesterday, basically one slide with a kind of key issues that were highlighted, which I think also lead nicely to the discussion that we have planned in the next sessions. And I think just to remind on yesterday's presentations and discussions, so what we have seen is kind of three key issues, key messages that we have picked there. The one is that really the improving the knowledge of farmers on the benefits of agroecological practices and the economic opportunities that arise from those practices and systems is a key aspect then for a successful transition. That's something really to foster and support. And also then the horizontal and vertical collaboration in the value chain, that the crucial importance here to address in a way the kind of bottlenecks of agroecology in the value chain when it comes to how to adjust processing, market access, and the value added for farmers. But also the tailored support to increase the capacity of local actors to create agroecological networks, to engage in the different networks. And I think that in particularly links also to the Living Labs, of course, for the agroecology partnership. So what we would like to do in the next session is, based on the presentations and all the different work that's done in UNISECO and the other projects and the preparations of the partnership, and also looking at the future CAP strategic plans, is then, if you can put the presentation back, please, just to the kind of two main questions there on how to engage value chain actors in agroecological transitions as a kind of first main discussion question, but also that question really links to the different aspects that we talked about in terms of the multi-actor engagement. What's the role and potential and experience really also of the multi-actor platforms? How can these contribute to that process? And how can we evaluate the engagement and the processes in those multi-actor engagements? And then the second question on how can future CAP effectively support agroecological transitions? What are particular instruments that need to be strengthened? And for that, we have planned to create 3 groups. And I think we have set up 3 sessions in which we will divide ourselves, but we will have a short break first. And we have, some of you have kindly agreed also then in the discussion to provide some initial views and statements on those questions, so that we get the discussion going, and we have moderation teams in the different groups that will guide us through the discussions. And I'm asking now, I think, Katalin, in terms of the division of the 3 groups. So I think that we will divide the groups rather pragmatically. If we have not approached you beforehand, or if we have not confirmed the group to you beforehand where we would like you to go, then please, what we would like to do is that those of you where the surnames start with the letter A to G, please go to group 1. I think that is session 15, if I am correct. And those of you where the surnames start with the letters H to P, they go to the group 2, which I think is session 16 in the hop-in schedule. And then we have the 3rd group with the surname starting with R to Z, and they go to the session 17. That is the 3rd group. If you are one of those who have kindly agreed to provide an introductory statement, a comment at the beginning to kick off the discussion, then we have already agreed with you where to go. So this does not apply then to you, but for all others, we would be grateful if you could go to those groups that we just indicated in terms of the letters. And maybe we can put this also in the main stage chat if that has not already done. I can't see this. Yeah.
Yes, I put that information.
Super. Perfect. I think that's all from my side, Kate. I hand over to you on that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Gerald, for setting up the afternoon.